Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Good Podcast. I'm your host, Mandy McCrane. And I am going to start this episode since we're going to dive into Genesis chapter 21. I'm going to actually recap what we heard on the last episode, um, chapters 16 through 20, Genesis 16 through 20, because a lot happened with Lot. And I'd like to address that before we continue on because it's kind of important to know and understand because God's will and uh, God's method of doing things is really important as we move forward. So, first of all, Lot offered up his two daughters to be gang raped, basically, because the men in the town were wanting to come have homosexual relations with the two visitors, the two angels, and Lot wanted to protect them. Seemingly honorable, however, bad choice uh, as far as his daughters go. So, the first incident involving Lot's daughters appears in Genesis 19 1 through 11. Two men who were really angels appeared in Sodom, where Lot lived with his family. The wicked men of the city surrounded Lot's house, seeking to have homosexual relations with the angels. Lot begged the men of the city not to do this evil thing, and he offered up his two virgin daughters to them instead. The second incident, Genesis 19:30 through 38, occurs after Lot and his daughters had fled Sodom just before its destruction. Lot's wife was destroyed for her disobedience during the journey, and Lot and his two daughters fled to live in a cave in a mountain. Afraid they would never have husbands or children in their hideout, Lot's daughters plotted to make their father drunk so they could sleep with him, and thereby assure that they would have children. To our modern sensibilities, it's hard to understand why God would allow these two terrible incidents to occur. We are told in 1 Corinthians 10 through 10:11 that the record of the Old Testament is meant as an example to us. In other words, God gives us the whole truth about biblical characters, their sins, their failures, their victories, and good deeds, and we are to learn from their example what to do and what not to do. In fact, this is one of the ways God teaches us that we need to know in order to make good choices as believers. We can learn the easy way by knowing and obeying God's word. We can learn the hard way by suffering the consequences of our mistakes. Or we can learn by watching others and taking heed from their experience. Scripture does not reveal Lot's reasoning for offering up his daughters. Whatever his thought process was, it was wrong and indefensible. Based on what is revealed about Lot's life, one might wonder if he was righteous. However, there is no doubt that God had declared him to be positionally righteous, even during his time in Sodom. And if God rescued righteous Lot, oppressed by the sensual conduct of unprincipled men, for by what he saw and heard, that righteous man, while living among them, felt his righteous soul tormented day after day with their lawless deeds. That was 2 Peter 2 7 and 8. At some point, Lot had believed in the coming Messiah, and that faith resulted in a righteous standing before God. It is likely that Lot's uncle Abraham had passed this truth down to him. That's why it's important to who's around you. So Lot was deemed righteous, more or less, because of Abraham. And what we have in the story of Lot is an illustration of a man who once lived closely to his godly relatives and had backslidden and was living according to his sin nature. Lot had moved to Sodom, even though he knew what it was, and he sat in the gate, Genesis 19:1. That sounds quite simple, but in fact, sitting in the gate meant that Lot had so entered into the society of Sodom that he was a judge there. And that showed in Genesis 19:9. In spite of his position, the men of Sodom had no respect for him because they knew he was a hypocrite. And so we may sit in judgment of the culture of that day, but protecting one's guests required great sacrifice. Was Lot right to offer his own daughters in place of the men of the Sodomite wanted? No. So, no, the Sodomites, like, that wasn't a good replacement. So, we can see in the story that the Lord's messengers protected Lot and his daughters in spite of Lot's lack of character and worldly viewpoint. Lot meant to appease the men of Sodom so that the hospitality of his house would not be damaged, but he makes the wrong choice in offering his own daughters, and God's messengers overruled him. Genesis 19:31 and 32 tells us that Lot's daughters believed there would be no man for them and no children. This may be because they saw the destruction of Sodom and believed they were the only people left on earth. They were trying to preserve the family line. Why did Lot have sex with his own daughters? He got drunk. Yes, his daughters conspired to get him drunk, but Lot willingly drank, and when he was drunk, he lost what little control and common sense he had. And this is the final step in Lot's backsliding. The lesson we can learn from this is when a person has too much to drink, he does not make good choices and loses control of his morals and operates out of the sinful, carnal nature. As a result of the incest, 2 children were born, and those 2 children are the fathers of 2 nations that have been at odds with and the source of much suffering in Israel down through history. And, why did God allow Lot to offer his daughters, and why did he allow them to commit incest? Sometimes God gives us his reasons for doing something, but not very often. The more we get to know God, the more we understand him and his reasons for doing things. But again, this doesn't always happen. We must be very careful when we ask why God does something and be sure we are not calling into question God himself, his judgment, his character, and his very nature. As the psalmist tells us, as for God, his way is perfect. And so basically, God gives us like, hey, this is the good, bad, and the ugly. And this is what we're dealing with all these people of the Bible. But this is to be an example for us. So chapter 21. And the Lord visited Sarah as he said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the nature of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, God hath made me to laugh, so that all here will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For when I have borne him a son in his old age, and the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. So talking about nursing him. Because I was like, God gave children that suckle. And that's a better word. But this says suck. Okay. And Sarah saw that the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. But basically, Ishmael was bullying Isaac. And God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad and because of thy bondwoman, in all that Sarah hath said unto thee. Hearken unto her voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. And also of the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and took bread and a bottle of water, and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs, and she went and sat down over against him a good way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him, and lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad. And the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven, and said unto her, what aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew, and dwelt in the wilderness, and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. Now therefore swear unto me here by God, that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me, and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. And Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. And Abimelech said, I wot not who hath done this thing? Neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I of it, but today. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. And Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, What mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? And he said, For these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. Wherefore he called that place Beersheba, because they swear both of them. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up, and Phicol, the chief captain of his host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba, and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the Philistines' land many days. So basically, in chapter 21, Abraham has to send Ishmael and Hagar away. But God blesses Ishmael and Hagar and lets them know that Ishmael will be the father of many nations as well. And then Abraham also made a covenant with Abimelech. Okay, chapter 22. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up, and went up unto the place which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, and laid it upon Isaac his son, and he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. He said, Here I am, I, my son. And he said, Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Lay not thy hand upon thy lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to this day, In the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. And the angel of the Lord called unto Abraham out of heaven the 2nd time, and said, By myself have I sworn with the Lord, for because thou hast done this thing, and thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in thy seed shall in all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned unto his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba. And Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. And it came to pass after these things that it was told Abraham, saying, Behold, Milcah, she hath also borne children unto thy brother Nahor, Huz his firstborn, and Buz his brother, and Kemuel the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Jildab, and Bethel. And Bethel begat Rebekah. These 8 Milcah did bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Reumah. She bare also Teba, and Gaham, and Thahash, and Mancah. Chapter 23. And Sarah was 107 and 20 years old. These were the years of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died in Kirjath Arba. The same is Hebron in the land of Canaan. And Abraham came to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Abraham stood up from before his dead and spake unto the sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger and a sojourner with you. Give me a possession of a burying place with you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight. And the children of Heth answered Abraham, saying unto him, Hear us, my lord. Thou art a mighty prince among us. In the choice of our sepulchres, bury thy dead. None of us shall withhold from thee his sepulchre, but that thou mayest bury thy dead. And Abraham stood up and bowed himself to the people of the land, even to the children of Heth. And he communed with them, saying, If it be your mind that I should bury my dead out of my sight, hear me, and entreat for me to Ephron, the son of Zohar, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he hath, which is in the end of his field, for as much money as it is worth, he shall give it me for possession of a burying place amongst you. And Ephron dwelt among the children of Heth. And Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the audience of the children of Heth, even of all that went in the gate of his city, saying, Nay, my lord, hear me. The field give I thee, and the cave that is therein I give it thee. In the presence of the sons of my people give I it thee. Bury thy dead. And Abraham bowed down himself before the people of the land, and he spake unto Ephron in the audience of the people of the land, saying, But if thou wilt give it, I pray thee, hear me, I will give thee money for the field. Take it of me, and I will bury my dead there. And Ephron answered Abraham, saying unto him, My lord, hearken unto me. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that betwixt me and thee? Bury before thy dead. And Abraham hearkened unto Ephron, and Abraham weighed to Ephron the silver, which he had named in the audience of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, current money, with the merchant, in the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, which was before Mamre, the field, and the cave which was therein, and all the trees that were in the field, that were in the borders round about, were made sure unto Abraham for a possession in the presence of the children of Heth, before all that went in at the gate of his city. And after this, Abraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah, before Mamre. The same is Hebron in the land of Canaan, and the field of the cave that is therein were made sure unto Abraham for a possession of a burying place by the sons of Heth. All right, so that was the end of chapter 23. So join us next time for starting in chapter 24. Have a great day, guys. Love you.